Hi, I'm Thomas Lee. I'm a PowerShell MVP, and I'm glad to be here today to talk to you about 10 cool things in PowerShell version 3 that you'll see in the upcoming Windows Server 2012. Now, what I want to talk about first of all, very briefly, is look at PowerShell V3 in Windows 8 and Server 2012. Talk about my top 10 and give you a summary. And what's cool about this set of videos is each of those top 10 will have a separate video where I'll actually demonstrate the particular function I'm talking about. So, some background. PowerShell version 3, getting to where we are today, has been a long journey. We first saw the Monad Manifesto in 2002, published by Jeffrey Snover, which set out a roadmap and a vision for what PowerShell was to become. Version 1 of PowerShell shipped with Vista in Server 2003. A great start. Version 2, an even better version of PowerShell, shipped with Windows 7, Server 2008 R2, and now version 3 ships with Server 2012 and Windows 8, and will be made available for down-level machines, including Windows 7 and Server 2008 R2 in due course. Now, I see three key themes here for PowerShell V3. The first is improving the usability, and we'll see some examples of that. PowerShell V3 is just easier to use and therefore easier to learn for people who are new to product. Those of you who have been living in a cave for all these years, haven't touched PowerShell, you'll find that version 3 makes life a lot easier for you. Secondly, increasing the surface area. Increasing the set of things we can manage using PowerShell. And PowerShell V3 is now vast, and I'll show you an example of that in one of my top 10. And finally, PowerShell has always been partly about the plumbing. It's been about building the underlying infrastructure that you can then leverage in other features. Classic example of this is all the PowerShell remoting features, dynamic modules, and so on, are all features that allow us to do some of the cool things like Server Manager in Windows Server 2012. The workflows that allow us to send scripts across machines and have them run even across a reboot. And I'll give you an example of that in one of my top 10. And the third, so those are three key areas. Now, my top 10. Okay, the list is arbitrary, but it's things I like, things I think are cool. The order is arbitrary too, but all 10 are cool. Now, it's worth saying that PowerShell version 3 is vast. There are hundreds of new features, and I do apologize profusely if I haven't picked one of your favorites. But there are so many, it's kind of hard to pick just 10. Now, what I'm going to do with each of these features is look at them, but obviously I can't demo everything. And what we'll do, as I said, is we'll talk about these, and then I'll show you where you can find more about each of the top 10. So my top 10 start off with PowerShell now is fully a part of Server Core. As I'll show you, you can very easily boot up, get into PowerShell, and you can even change the default shell to being PowerShell. Number 2, more commandlets, more modules. Gosh, there's so much more new stuff, it's hard to keep up. Third, SIM, Common Information Model, and the commandlets from XML. This is effectively a rehash of the WMI. Think of it WMI V2 or vNext. Workflows, being able to ship scripts across machines that are long-running and survive a reboot. And I'll show you an example of that. And I've also got a really cool workflow which actually builds virtual machines. The fifth is the integrated scripting environment, which is now just seriously cool. And I'll show you how much that's improved in V3. I mentioned making things easier. The syntax for where object get child item was a little bit tedious, and there's now a much simplified syntax, which I'm finding I'm really enjoying. 7 is updatable help. Help in V1 and V2 came in the box, but for really good reasons was never updated. Now we have the ability to update help, so as you find errors in help text, not only for the built-in commandlets, but also for third-party, that the vendors of those commandlets can now ship easily updated help. Number 8, remoting, and more importantly, robust remoting. Remoting in V2 was an awesome feature, but it was a little bit temperamental. At the first sign of problems, everything failed. And so now we have a much more reliable, robust bit of remoting. And while I can't show you much about robustness, because it just works, trust me, it just works. Number 9 is module autoload. Now, this is something which I've gotten so used to, I kind of forget it's a feature. In V2, if you had a module, you had to actually load it before you could use it. Now in V3, if PowerShell knows where a particular commandlet is held and you try and use that commandlet, the module will automatically load, making life a lot simpler in a lot of production scenarios. And the final top 10 is the PowerShell web service, where you can actually get to PowerShell on a machine from IIS. I think that's really cool. So that's my top 10. Now what I'm going to do is each of these will have a separate video here on the YouTube channel, and that's http://youtube.com MVP Rocks UK and IE, and I welcome you to come back and look at all 10 of those. Thanks, and we'll see you on the flip side.
Brilliant.